Greetings, welcome to the Coaching Inn. Please, have a seat. Maybe you'd like to order some food or a drink, perhaps. Stories of misadventures? Well, I might have some stories you might be interested in. Please sit back and relax. I will tell you about one particular orc who got himself into all sorts of mischief. I heard a story once about Wurrzag, one of the greatest orc shamans ever born. One day, whilst praying, he had a vision from Gork and Mork. They told him to go north and kill the pointy ears that live in the snow. They said he could find a magical treasure that would give him great power. So, what he did was gather up all the boys he could find to take north and to conquer these pointy ears and reclaim this great treasure. He started walking north with his army through Wissenland and the Reichland, but all of a sudden, as he was traveling, he ran across something peculiar. He noticed in the distance a small goblin running alongside a squig, and of course Wurrzag loves squigs, enough that he carries one on his back all the time. So he thought maybe they could get along, maybe this goblin knows some information that he obviously doesn't know. But unfortunately, the goblin, Skarsnik, was an enemy. They had a mighty fight. The battle raged on, and Wurrzag, afraid he was going to lose, called in the boys to come in and help fight this little gobbo. Now, of course, Wurrzag's not the strongest. I mean, he is a shaman after all, whereas Skarsnik is a mighty goblin warrior. So I think, Wurrzag probably would have gotten his ass handed to him if the boys didn't come in and help. And at this point, he had a lot of boys. After being defeated and captured, he told Wurrzag where he could find a bunch of pointy ears living. Together with their armies, they traveled south to find these pointy ears and claim Wurrzag's prize. Wurrzag and the goblin gathered their armies and marched into the elves' forest, ready to attack. With both of these armies combined, this was a force to be reckoned with. The elves held the high ground, and with their bows, there weren't many strategies Wurrzag could pull off. So he did what he always does, sending in the boys in a frontal charge, in the hopes of breaking their line. Wurrzag tried his best to make sure that the goblins took the brunt of the damage and were acting as a meat shield for his boys, but with cavalry battles happening on the right flank and monster battles on the left, it became hard to direct his forces, especially since he was bashing some heads in as well. The battle was fierce. Many orcs and goblins died in order to push back the elves and their moving trees. But because the orcs outnumbered the elves by so much, the elves quickly fell to the green tidal wave. With the elves defeated and running for their lives, Wurrzag, eager to claim his prize, pushed forward to the giant tree. Unfortunately for him, he had forgotten a very important detail of his mission. There was no snow. No snow anywhere to be seen. Wurrzag turned to question the goblin, but he was too late. The goblin sneaked off and ran away with his troops.
Dice can't defeat me!
Wurrzag quickly realized he was tricked and became furious about this betrayal. He decided to chase and hunt down the sneaky goblin in order to get his revenge. He gathered his boys, reformed his army, and backtracked the way he came in order to find this goblin Git. Wurrzag knew where the tricksy Git made his base and decided to raze it to the ground. Wurrzag was determined to find and kill the Git, but along the way, his scouts spotted some strangely dressed humans. They were covered in all kinds of fur and had strange animals by their side. Never seeing anything like it before, and because they were in his way, Wurrzag decided to crush them and continue his hunt for the goblin. He used his mighty spells in order to break their formations, and his boys quickly overran these puny humans. They soon started running for their lives, but many were captured and interrogated. He learned from the captives that if he continued north, he would come across a land filled with ice and snow, and that the treasure he seeks is possibly there. Wurrzag quickly decided that the treasure was far more important than the goblin. He took his mighty army and marched north through the Empire and into the snow-covered land. Unfortunately, as soon as he started crossing this new land, he was ambushed. Trolls, dogs, and more humans came down from the ridge and started attacking his army. This ambushing force was led by a troll that looked like a giant. His army was caught completely unprepared and out of place. His archer boys were caught in the melee, and giants and monsters were at the back of the column, not being able to enter the fray. Wurrzag was being pushed back by the tide of trolls and dogs coming down from the ridge. It was starting to look bleak for him, but thankfully his army was much larger in comparison to the ambushing army, and soon the orcs started to push the enemy back and take over the ridge. The enemy leader fought wildly and killed many orcs with his giant mace, but soon was taken down and captured by the sheer number of orcs swarming him. It was lucky for Wurrzag that the enemy leader was a troll, which aren't really known for their wisdom. If they had attacked with a much larger army, Wurrzag and his forces would have been destroyed. After being captured, the troll begged Wurrzag to spare his life, and in return would give him or tell him anything that he wanted. Wurrzag, still on his quest, asked the troll if he knew of the pointy-eared elves that lived in the snow. The troll took a moment to think and remembered seeing them long ago. They wore dark armor and landed on the west shores and raided the coastline for slaves. He had seen them sail back west towards another land filled with snow. With the remains of his army, Wurrzag trekked across Norsca and sailed across the seas, and at the end, he saw a massive city which oozed magic and power. Once Wurrzag saw the city, he knew that this was the location of the treasure that he sought. Unfortunately, all the battling and the traveling has almost crippled his entire army, leaving him with just a small force left, barely enough to even kill some lowly goblins. But Wurrzag, being the crazy bastard that he is, decided to charge the city to take what was rightfully his. I'm not really sure, but somehow, even with all the fire from the towers and the hundreds of arrows being rained down upon him, he managed to make it up onto the walls and put up a somewhat good fight, considering it was just him and a few units. And although it was a short fight, you know, he did put up a fight. By some miracle, he even managed to escape, which is pretty impressive itself, considering how many troops were garrisoned at this city. He must have pulled off some sort of magic. And by letting him live, the Dark Elves pretty much invited disaster on themselves, because he determined to come back. He wanted this item. After his escape, he managed to reform his Wa somehow. I'm not really sure what he did. Maybe he made some posters or something. Had some boys shipped over from the Badlands. But I guess it doesn't really matter in the end. He just managed to get enough troops together in order to re-attack the city and take the item that he's so desperately wanted. And with this mighty army, it seemed inevitable that he would actually win and take the city. Even with all these rowdy orcs, he somehow managed to corral them into a formation. His plan was to send the heavy armored black orcs in first, followed by the killy savage orcs behind them. He even had siege equipment and artillery made for this battle. He was that determined to win. With all these preparations, he knew victory was at hand. His siege towers took the wall, and a great slaughter commenced. Since the wall was only so big, he needed a second way to get his boys into the city. So he decided to destroy the city gate. He used his magic and giant monsters in order to bring the gate down. The gate didn't really stand a chance. It was destroyed in a matter of minutes, which allowed Wurrzag and his boys into the city. They now could swarm the streets, destroying and killing everything in their path. With the battle on the walls won, the green tide swept over the city, making short work of the remaining dark elves on the streets and the ones trying to retreat to the center where their leader was. The Wa made their way to the center of the city to finally kill the dark elf leader. He didn't stand a chance, and he quickly fled the ruined city. With the city now his, Wurrzag made his way to the mighty spire. He did a little jig and collected his much sought-after prize. And there you have it, a story about one of the Greenskin's greatest shamans. It's not a very well-known story, but that's what you came for, right? Huh? What was the item that he got? Well, honestly, no one knows. After destroying the city, he quickly went back to the Badlands and was never really talked of again. I personally like to think that he got an item so powerful that he was afraid others would covet it. But, you know, only Wurrzag knows the truth.